Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this presentation. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the Trump trial in New York City at the moment. This is the Alvin Bragg one, over alleged payment or inappropriate recording of payments to Stormy Daniels some years ago. Now, regardless of the merits of the case, I think it's the weakest case that you could possibly imagine, and how it's got to be a prosecution or got to court speaks volumes about how partisan and corrupted the legal system is when it can be used and abused and subverted in such a clearly political way. Nonetheless, the various, you probably remember, if anyone's been following it, the impaneling of the jury. So there are 12 jurors in the case, and there was some drama and difficulty in impaneling a jury because it was so difficult so hard to find jurors that were either thought they should be impartial and just listen to the evidence and make a decision based on that. So there's a shortage of people who thought they should be impartial, and those who just point blank refused to be impartial. Now, I guess this is interesting in itself, because if you're called for jury duty, what your duty is to listen to the evidence, hear the evidence, and then make a decision based on the evidence. Now, the evidence can be tested and argued by the various lawyers, but that's what you're supposed to do when you're a member of the jury. It doesn't matter whether you like or don't like the person, or the people who are being prosecuted or accused. It doesn't matter whether you like their politics or their attitudes or views, or I don't know, their hair or something. It doesn't matter. You're supposed to rely on the evidence. Now, I can't see what the drama. Why is that difficult? That's your job. You may have views about the person or the accused, but that doesn't matter. You only go on the evidence. But there are people who are blatantly saying, "No, I'm not going to listen to the evidence. I've already made up my mind." And who gives a fuck about the evidence? Take this guy out the back and shoot him, for goodness sakes. Why are we even bothering with a trial? So I find that remarkable. But to me, it indicates how much the window of acceptance has changed or moved. That trials and court cases are now viewed as a way of getting even with someone you don't like, or why are we bothering? We've got them in court, we can find them guilty. Who cares about the facts? Let's just do it. Why even give them a trial? Just sling a rope over the nearest tree and hang them. This sort of attitude, which I find remarkable. You would think that these so-called social progressives who believe that we should move forward and socially progress to a higher plane of understanding and sensitivity and so on should view the trials and courts as being, hey, who cares? Ideological guilt is what matters now, not factual guilt. So there was a real struggle in getting people on the jury. Now, there were some arguments where, if you sort of look at some of the media coverage, they were saying, well, New York is a super Democrat sort of area, and so you're much more likely to find people who are against Trump than otherwise. But that's hardly the point here. Again, I come back to the central issue. The juror is meant to make a decision based on the evidence. But this was seen as almost impossible, well, not impossible, but very difficult to do. So the amount of jurors, again, that didn't even think that they should be impartial, or that it was a requirement, or, hey, I don't care. The amount of jurors that tried to deceitfully get themselves onto the jury, being never Trumpers and super anti-Trumpers, by trying to hide their social media history of being very negative to Trump. So why would they engage in such deceit, and why were those people not prosecuted? When, in my view at least, it was quite clear their intention was to subvert the course of justice by misrepresenting themselves as impartial jurors when in fact they were highly partisan. So looking at the jury selection process overall, it was, to me, quite a surprise that there was such a problem in getting impartial jurors. Now, what this also means is that someone's social media history is now viewed as integral to themselves as a person, the whole person. If you have a social media history, it must be gone over, and it must be pored over, and you should be held to account for any views that you have. Now, this is something that you notice in say, human resource departments and diversity departments in whether it be government or even larger private sector companies, that if you make because they're typically lean hard left, these people, so if you make a post saying that I'm a never Trumper, then that that is almost a passport to employment. But if on the other hand you make a posting saying, well, I disagree with mass migration, or I like President Trump's policies or something like that, can be a disqualification from employment, and then that information goes in sort of an underground network where you're forever tagged with, well, look at that Nazi, and so the social media history becomes a, if you like, a footprint that can be used against you without your knowledge or consent. So some of these people, the jurors, were attempting to conceal their social media history of being never-Trumpers and anti-Trumpers, and yet when it was discovered, they oh well, you found me out, okay, I'll go home now, and again there was no prosecutions for that. So there appears to have been, certainly by my reading of it, a great deal of effort put in by activists to make sure that they could stack the jury to produce a guilty verdict. Now, why do that? Just let the evidence decide. Let the evidence speak for itself. But actually, very few had that outlook. Certainly, that I could find. Now, you're far more likely to get an idea of an independent, impartial jury in a red state or in an area where there's a lot of Republicans. But there appears to be, well, not appears to be, there is a view in these politically active areas of the United States, or indeed the West generally, where it's viewed as quite permissible. Now, this is I think, because the law is perceived ideologically. So, Trump is ideologically guilty because he's a racist, he's a racist because he wanted to lower mass migration, or so there's this sort of miasma of juvenile, delusional understanding of the world, and well, he's ideologically guilty just being a bad guy. So why should we care whether he's guilty in this instance, or the facts suggest he's guilty for this or that crime? That doesn't really matter. We've got him in court. We now can get him. We brought him to a point where we can get him. So let's not let this opportunity to get him slip by, because ideology. What is this? Well, what is he specifically guilty of? Doesn't matter. He's ideologically just guilty. So let's throw the motherfucker in prison. Throw away the fucking key and be done with it. And this attitude comes across now. Looking at the media coverage in the major media outlets, whether it be the BBC in Britain, or the New York Times and NPR, or any of these news outlets or information and media outlets, CNN, MSNBC, they take the view that firstly they dismiss as right-wing conspiracies that Trump is being persecuted when he most clearly is, and they take the view that again, his guilt in this case kind of doesn't really matter. It's not really relevant. He's just ideologically guilty, so this is just a way of getting at him for his ideological guilt, and then that's a good thing. So if we pervert the course of justice, if we stack the jury, if we invent evidence, commit perjury, that these things don't really matter, because ideologically we should be doing these things to get the bad guys, and if we have to subvert every law and commit every perjury and stack every jury to do it, then we're allowed to do that, because we're the good guys sticking it up the bad guys, so we're allowed to do this. Now, this is an attitude throughout all if you like, globalist inspired, destroy the fabric of Western jurisprudence type areas of law, which is really permeating all of them. All you need to do is look at the rabid activist judges that are being appointed all over the Western world today to see this is happening. The law and the evidence and the facts don't really matter. The ideology is what matters. And you see this in say, divorce courts as an example, which is the commencing epicenter of this sort of ideological type justice. That if the family report, the psychologist interviews the family members. Now they come up with 99.9% findings that the father is an abuser, he's a wife basher, and he's just an all-round evil bad guy that probably worships Hitler. That sort of finding, and it's a very, very consistent type finding that they come out with. Whether they've actually interviewed the father or not doesn't seem to matter. They still find those same conclusions. Now, the view that they take, and the activists around the divorce court take, is, well, look, okay, so we told a lot of lies, we committed perjury on the stand, we invented this whole thing. He's actually not done any of those things. He's not a wife bashing, child abusing Nazi. He's none of those things. But look, it doesn't really matter, because men have been oppressing women for centuries, and this is sort of an ideological payback, an equalising of outcomes, compensatory justice. This is what this is. So we're allowed to do that because history, because ideology, and so it's okay. We haven't really done anything wrong. We've actually done something good. Don't you understand that? And if you don't understand it, that means you're a Nazi, quite possibly Hitler. So these are the things that are represented in the activist media articles that talk about these cases, that talk about this Trump case, or indeed other Trump cases, where, why should the jury be impartial? Why? Why should they be impartial? An impartial jury may acquit Donald Trump based on the facts. So why do we care about the facts? Why should they matter? The purpose of this case is to get him, to stick it up him, to put him in prison, to neutralise him, to stop the bad guy. So if we have to, any perjury, any lie, anything we do, no matter how high-handed, no matter how illegal, is acceptable, because we're doing this good ideological work. And it was intriguing to read articles that effectively were annoyed that so much effort was put into trying to impanel a jury that would be impartial, because the view expressed, indirectly, it wasn't directly expressed, is that an impartial jury will probably acquit him. So therefore an impartial jury is bad. Bad because he'll get acquitted. And so what we need to do is make sure he doesn't get acquitted, make sure he doesn't get off. We have to make sure he gets a guilty verdict. And it's quite okay. And if we've got to stack the entire jury with screaming radical anti-Trumpers, then that doesn't matter, because really we're doing a good thing by doing that. And this came across in pretty much all the articles, this annoyance and irritation that an impartial jury was a bad thing. You have to understand how, this is how far we've gone down the shithole, if you like, that there are those out there that believe, and many of them, by the way, believe, including district attorneys and so on, that believe that a impartial jury that's meant to look at the facts, that's their job, that they swear an oath to do this, that an impartial jury is actually a bad thing now. That's insane, but that's where we are in the Western world, and it's getting worse. So the idea of an impartial jury and the facts. So the facts of the case are very weak in going after Trump. It's at the very worst, it's a minor bookkeeping error, and so, but it's acceptable because it gives us an opportunity to get Trump and put him in prison. Therefore, this is a good thing, this subversion of the law, this politicisation of the law, this use of activist judges and activist DAs coordinating between themselves and the White House. This is a good thing. Now, what if the reverse occurs, though? What if, say, a radical feminist lesbian teaching radical transgender theories in a junior school, what if they get dragged into court? Oh, no. They're protected by the law. The law protects them. No. They have to have an impartial jury. They should have a jury of radical trans lesbians hearing their case. No, we can't. So it's hypocritical in the extreme that if there's people you don't like, ideologically, on the other side of the divide, then you're allowed to do anything and everything to get them. But if it's someone whose views, the transgender lesbian or something, then they must be afforded every protection of the law, plus some, double protection, triple protection. There must be scrupulous observance of the law to protect them, but a scrupulous non-observance of the law to go after the other guy. So that's where I couldn't find a single article in the mainstream, globalist control media that approved of the effort made to get an impartial jury in this Trump trial. Not a single one. They all perceived it as a retrograde step and something that would make it, if anything that makes it more difficult to throw Trump in prison must be a bad thing, is the ideological position they take. And I can't highlight this enough, that there's not a single politician that I'm aware of, there's not a single major media outlet or a single law society or anything like that is prepared to stand up against this politicisation and ideological subversion of the Western legal system, and that's to the detriment of it all. The only way we can have equality in any society is if we're all completely equal before the law. That's the only way, and as soon as that gets abandoned, which it has been and is being, and is in most places already been abandoned, then none of us are equal anymore. We're up to some arbitrary, the state can just arbitrarily arrest us, imprison us, fine us, do whatever it wants, and there's no legal place you can go and be defended. So that is the greatest tragedy among, that I think we're facing today in the West. You've been with Tassos today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.